The AFC West and the AFC Conference as a whole is only getting tougher. With every team in the division and heavy hitters like the Ravens and the Bills making a push, did the Chargers do enough in the 2025 offseason to contend for a trip to the Super Bowl? Let's get into it. With training camp right around the corner, the rookies report on Saturday, and the veterans should be in by end of next week. It's time to talk about expectations. The 2025 offseason was pretty good for the Chargers in its entirety. I think we all can agree that the Jim Harbaugh regime has been stellar at smashing the draft. And like to be expected, I think that them being college football coaches or former college football coaches in the last 3 to 4 years know intimate details about the college ranks and what the college players look like and who they recruited and who they like, who they think fit the Harbaugh regime. So they've done great things in the draft. I think we all can agree with that. It's a breath of fresh air for most Chargers fans because we've had some up and down and topsy-turvy drafts in the past 10 years. So it's a breath of fresh air. But with that particular idea of Jim Harbaugh coming in and quote unquote being the winning coach that he is, it comes with a set of expectations. So can the Chargers with this roster as it's currently constructed be a Super Bowl contender in 2025? I argued early on when I started this pod that this team might be a year away because I think there's some glaring holes that still need to be addressed. However, I think there could be a situation where you could address it now versus later. I understand that you're building for the future, you're developing, you're doing things that genre, right? But I do think that this team, as well as coaches it's going to be in the next few years, can contend and have a window of opportunity here that could, land them in the Super Bowl if they play the cards right. So what I'm going to do is address the glaring weaknesses that the team has, where there's going to be, some definite holes that other teams can exploit, and what the Chargers could potentially do to kind of plug those areas and, fix those, particular positions or roster spots that maybe improve them enough to not be the glaring weakness on the team. Because understand this, as the further along you get in the season, teams are going to get film on you. They're going to understand what they can do against you, and they're going to exploit your weaknesses to a T if they have the ability to do so. And one of these weaknesses that I'm going to point out is something that's going to be very glaring, especially with the division that we play in. The defenses on the AFC website are very good, especially in the interior D-line perspective. So we're going to talk about it. We'll talk about that in its entirety. So let's get into everything that I feel like is going to be a weakness, and will the Chargers, be opportunistic and maybe fulfill the Super Bowl window in 2025. So starting off with the number one, I guess you can say, point of emphasis for me is the wide receiver room. I think it's a building room. I guess you can say a developing room. We brought back Mike Williams. I guess you can say an predominantly X receiver, a 50-50 ball and red zone target type of receiver. Not a great route runner, not great speed. He's just a really big target. I mean, let's just be honest about it. I mean, we can't at this particular stage of over 30 for Mike Williams expect him to be anything else but that. Injury concerns, have plagued him out throughout this year. He had a down year last year with the Jets and Steelers. So bringing him back, he does have a rapport with Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert appreciates his catch radius, I'm sure. And when he's on the field, he can rely on Mike to be a really, really reliable catcher of the football. Again, he's not going to blow by you. He's not going to, quote unquote, route you up, as a lot of wide receivers like to say in those spaces. But, if you are in a space where it's 50-50, him or you, is likely going to be him. So that's definitely a skill. But it's just, his predominantly only skill. So there's limitations there. Then we get to Quentin Johnston, who we don't know exactly what he is, in all honesty. And I really have spoke my, I guess you can say, critiques about him and his ability to catch the football. He has all the tools to be a good receiver in this league. I think he can, with his athletic ability, his short area quickness, his agility, his speed, his strength, all those things can be a good dominant receiver in this league. You know, he may need to do a little bit of fine tuning on his route running, but outside of that, he really has all the tools to be a receiver. But the problem is his hands. His hands are a liability. His hands are a liability. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. He has concentration drop problems. You know, he can be wide open and hit him right in his hands. He drops it. He might catch it. He might not. If he doesn't have the ability to catch the ball with his hands, or he feels the pressure not to catch the ball with catching the ball with his body, not his hands, he feels the pressure, and it might get to him. Then the pressure of him not catching the ball will get to him. He'll have an issue when he drops the football. We've seen it multiple times in coverage, wide open, third down, getting a first down, wide open, 50-50 jump ball situations. It's been all over the field in the last 2 years. We've seen it. So there's a glaring issue there. You know, I think Glad McConkey is not on his list, obviously, because he is proven. He is definitely proven he's the number one receiver on this team. But the problem is he's a small slot guy. In all honesty, and speaking from a defensive coordinator perspective, a small slot guy is easier to defend. Because what I can do in spaces and situations where he's not isolated outside man-to-man, one-on-one, I can bracket him with multiple players. I would argue that I can play man on the outside of Mike and Quentin and with good corners, and I can just bracket Ladd with my linebackers, my safeties, and my slot corners, and I can surround him. I can triple cover him if I wanted to, if he's the only threat outside of those two. So, you know, again, there's limitations there when you have Ladd as your number one receiver being the slot guy. The smaller slot guy. He's a talented and A1 receiver. I would like to believe he's going to have 1,000 yards this year, maybe 10 touchdowns. But again, he is a smaller slot guy, and he can be defended. So I would argue that you need a guy that's on the outside that's going to be able to win, is going to be able to run routes, going to win man coverage situations. And in all honesty, you know, I'm no knock on Trey Harris, but Trey Harris, I talked about this in previous videos, that he's much like Mike Williams. He's a better version of Mike Williams. A little bit shorter, but he's a good contested ball catcher. He's not extremely fast. He runs a little bit better routes than Mike, and I believe he's better at the catch than Mike. But yet again, he's more of a 50-50 X receiver. He has a skill set of where Mike is going to play versus playing the Y, or Z position on the field. He's not that guy. In all honesty, I think he's going to be the replacement for Mike once Mike is gone. I think that's what his role is going to be. So my answer to this whole situation, you can see it on the screen, is bringing back Keenan Allen. I think bringing back Keenan Allen, it makes a lot of sense here. I really do. Because again, his ability to be one of the best route runners in this league, he can win one-on-one, he can play the slot, he can play the outside, he can play wherever you need him to play. And he can be effective and dominant, and he will definitely take the pressure off Ladd. Now, having to defend Keenan and Ladd is a problem for most defenses, in my opinion, because most teams don't have two, predominant lockdown corners that can cover both of those guys. I'm sorry. They're too good at route running. They really are. They're too good at separation. They're too good at getting open. They're too good at catching the football. You have no weaknesses in those areas. So if you brought back Keenan Allen and develop Trey Harris slow and do what you can with Mike Williams, hopefully you can keep him healthy and figure out what Chris Johnson's situation. I think that having Keenan and Ladd on the field, you have two guys that Justin Herbert will feel comfortable with throwing the football. I think that will fix the weaknesses of this room, because if you roll out this wide receiver room as it's currently constructed, there's a lot of questions here. Who's going to be the number one guy? Who's going to be the outside guy that's going to be able to win one-on-one, run routes, get open versus press man coverage, and gets these good corners from the Broncos to the Chiefs to the Texans, you name it, to the Bills, the Ravens, you name it. Yeah, it's a lot of good corners in the AFC. It is. It really is. So to be able to get open and get free in those particular situations, you need a good wide receiver like Keenan Allen. So I suggest that the Chargers go out and get him and bring him in for at least a one-year deal until you figure out what your next move is at wide receiver and who's going to be that number one. And if we all, pray and hope that the number one draft pick that Quentin Johnson would develop into that and he can get over his issues, but I'm not confident. I'm not confident. So to fix those issues and to move this team forward and get them to the promised land, you should bring in Keenan Allen to fix his wide receiver room, in my opinion. So moving on to the next group is the offensive line. The offensive line in the interior is a problem. I'm just going to say it. They've got two solid all-pro tackles. We're not going to sit here and argue that's not a solidified area. They got to play Rashawn Slater. That's something they got to work out. Hopefully it gets done soon. But the interior is a question. Now, Mekhi Becton is on the right side, and then he's a great run blocker. He's a above average pass blocker, but I will preface by saying this about Mekhi Becton, even though he's not on this list. That Mekhi Becton was not stellar at pass protection with Philly or the Jets. He was not stellar. He was not stellar tackle or guard. Now, I will argue that it was masked a lot of his inability to pass pro for long stretches in the interior because of that Eagles O-line was so good. So if you see some struggles with the interior O-line, even on Mekhi Becton's side, understand that before his Super Bowl run with the Eagles, he was not great at pass protection. He was not. He's a great run blocker. He's one of the best. But it's his pass protection, one-on-one, can be leaving somebody to desire if you're going against a good interior D lineman like Chris Jones. So I'm going to preface it by saying that. But speaking of the guys that are really of an issue on this list, and that's really a problem for me, Zion Johnson, hopefully, maybe playing center, according to what Jim Harbaugh wants to do, potentially what he done in OTAs, we don't know. Bradley Bozeman is the center from last year. I think they both have issues, and I've talked about them in large spaces about how they are very, very underwhelming when it comes down to pass protection. They're really good run blockers, but their pass protection, their line calls, and their footwork in general is a problem, and they just have issues with dealing with interior D linemen by themselves. They really do. Really do. So having communication issues on top of having pass protection issues is a recipe where there's actually get pressure in Justin Herbert's face in the interior in 2025. So you look at those guys and you say, well, you have Andre James and Jamari Salyer to push them, right? But yet again, I haven't heard Andre James' name once since he's been on the team. And Jamari Salyer has had his problems too in pass protection. We've seen him get beat and beat badly in the Texans game in the playoffs. So, in different spaces, he's had problems just like Zion and Bradley Bozeman and pass pro. So I would argue that you should have spent capital on a center. I mean, I still argue they should have went out and got Jake Majors instead of letting the Buccaneers pick him up as a UDFA. And hopefully, fixing that position, because I think we fixed the position at center, that should fix the woes. I think you can get away with having one of these guys playing guard, maybe Zion playing left guard. But having two of these guys in the interior, along with Mekhi Becton, is a recipe for Justin Herbert to have the same problems he had last year, he will this year. So we got to fix the issue. Now, there are some answers here in the free agency that they could go out and potentially bring in. Now, Brandon Scherf, a former all-pro bowler from the Jaguars, is still out there. He's a guard. He can be plugged in in playing left guard, and hopefully you figure out what you're going to do at center, be it Bozeman and or Zion. But you bring in Bradley Bozeman and let him play guard, you are in a much better situation than you are right now. And if you don't bring in Brandon Scherf, Shaq Mason is another one, a former Patriot and Texan who's been really good down the stretches of times where he's been really good in the interior. He's still out there. And David Andrews, who's the only center on the books right now as a free agent that's of any noteworthiness that could play center and play center at a high level. He's been playing with the New England Patriots for years. He's been really good in that space. So I would argue if you brought in David Andrews or one of these other guys, both, and you could legit fix your O-line overnight. And I'll sleep more comfortably and feel better about Justin Herbert's protection with one or two of these guys in the interior O-line in 2025. But the Chargers got to make these moves. I can't make them for them, but that was my suggestion. It was what they should do. I think they definitely should bring at least one of these guys to not only put pressure on the guys that are currently there, but potentially take over if they don't pan out early on in the season or preseason for that matter. So I would argue that bringing at least one of these guys would definitely help the room, and it'll be cheap. It's a one-year deal. You got cap money. There's no reason why you shouldn't at least kick the tires on them. You don't give them any guarantees. You bring them in for a one-year deal. Give them a handsome deal. They don't work out. You cut them. No harm, no foul. So that's my suggestions for the interior O-line. Now, next up is the interior D-line. Now, I am high on Jamari Caldwell. I think that he's going to be a star based upon what I've seen him in college. But yet again, there is a growing pain when it comes to getting into the NFL. Going from college is different than playing in the NFL. And he has the size, the strength, the quickness, the tools to do it and do it well in its interior D-line. But we got to see it first. So he's an unknown. And the surrounding cast around him, outside of Tierra Tart, I got questions about. Naquan Jones, who came over from the Cardinals. I mean, he had a couple of plays here and there. He played us in 2024, but in large spaces, in full sample size of his season, he doesn't move the needle for me as far as being a dominant interior D lineman. Deshaun hadn't either. He's bounced around from the Titans to the Dolphins to now the Chargers. Again, not great. I mean, I would argue that Naquan and Deshaun are better pass rushing interior D linemen than run stopping. You need a guy, especially playing a 34 defense. You need two guys on top of having Terrence Hart to be able to plug up lanes and plug up rushing areas in the run game to be able to keep the linebackers and safeties free so they can make plays downhill. You know, if you don't have these guys that can legit cause havoc and kick up linemen occupancies and take up their space and get to the point where they can push the rush lanes, you know, backwards instead of forward, then you're going to have an issue with them, you know, with them running the ball on you. And linebackers getting 300-pound linemen in their chests, and they're going to have 3 to 4 or 5 yards before you even get a chance to stop the play. So can Naquan, Deshaun, and even though Tito Obonyo, who I've been critical of in spaces, you know, videos on this channel, can he do it? We haven't seen it in 3 years out of him either. I mean, big, massive human being, but he lacks the strength and dexterity in a lot of spaces to be a good run stopper. I don't understand what his problem is either. You know, and, you know, they talk about Justin, I'm not going to butcher his last name, but the kid they drafted out of Alabama last year, he put on weight, so maybe he's a breakout candidate, but again, we haven't seen it. You know, he had a lot of growing pains, like I talked about Jamari earlier. He had a lot of growing pains in year one. So will Jamari have the same problem? We don't know. So will Justin fill a void? Will Naquan, Deshaun, or Otito break out or be a dominant run stopper on top of a pass rushing D lineman? We don't know. But I got questions there. So if Jamari pans out like I think he will, and Terrence Hart pans out, that's 2. Who's going to be the third? We need at least 3 guys. And on top of the fact that we need depth as well. So one of these guys will have to step up to be able to honestly and truly, you know, solidify this run defense and get things moving back at the quarterback and not towards the linebackers in 2025. That's just my take on it. Now, in regards to answers for this, I honestly don't have one because, again, I looked at the free agency pool for interior D linemen, and it's not great. It is not great. I mean, a couple of retrades of guys that have been with the Chargers before that you don't want to deal with because they were busts, and guys that just don't move the needle. They're much like these guys on the screen outside of Jamari. We don't know. You know, they haven't proven up to this point of being in the league 2 or 3, 4, 5 years that they could do anything differently than what they've done in the league and why they're free agents in the first place. So we don't know, but I hope that things would change and one of these guys will step up and be a dominant force in the interior D lineman in 2025. And lastly is the secondary. Outside of Dante Jackson and Tarheeb Steele, I'm wondering. And now, yeah, I know you see Cam Hart on this list. Say, hey, Cam had a great year last year. He did. But my question about Cam is his concussions. And there's a reason why I bring this group up in the first place. Because if Cam, Tarheeb, Dante are going to be the top 3, right? And let's say Cam goes out for any stretch of time because of concussions, or he's out for the season, God forbid, because of concussions. Who's going to be the next guy to step up? We need at least 3 to 4 corners to play in this defense, especially on heavy pass downs. You got a lot of good receivers in the conference. We got to be able to cover them. So is Benjamin St. Juice, Dean Leonard, or Jasiah Taylor going to be the guy? I beg to differ. I watched Benjamin St. Juice get St. cooked for 3 years in Washington. Dean Leonard and Jasiah Taylor have not been, I guess you can say, household names when it comes down to being cover corners in this league as well. I mean, speedy, athletic guys, both run 4.3 40s, but you just don't see the it factor with neither one of these guys. So I question that as well. So, you know, if you had to bring in another guy that could fill a void if Cam Hart went out, and a guy that I feel like he can ultimately, you know, be a contributor, I would argue that you can look at C.J. Henderson. I think C.J. Henderson is a very physical and I guess you can say talented outside corner in this league. I think he can be one of those guys. You would bump, you know, maybe Dante or Tarheeb into the slot, maybe let him play outside, you know, and he could be a contributor to this team. You know, because I would argue that I would take C.J. Henderson over Jasiah Taylor or Dean Leonard right now, and Benjamin St. Juice for that matter. If I had to take one of them guys off and cut him for his services, I would do it, in all honesty. And I would feel more comfortable with Dante Jackson, C.J. Henderson, Tarheeb Steele, Cam Hart, Dante Jackson, and C.J. Henderson. Those are my 4. I would feel comfortable with that room. And with Derwin, Elijah Molden, RJ Mickens, you know, a few others backing those guys up in the safety room, I would like that room. I would like that secondary room in its entirety. So I would bring in C.J. Henderson for a workout just to see what he got, at least see what he has left in the tank. He's bounced around a little bit. Panthers for a little while. He's with the Steelers practice squad last year, but he's still a free agent, and I will bring him in if I'm the Chargers. So we'll see how things roll. But I like C.J. Henderson's talent. I like his skill set. I think he's a very physical and underrated cover corner in this league. So I think he can get things done for my money. So we'll see how things roll, man. But those are my glaring weaknesses and my answers to those problems. And let me know in the comments, man, how you feel about these guys. And do you really feel like these areas are weaknesses for the team? Do you think that we have any more weaknesses that I haven't covered? Things that you want to see improve before the season starts in 2025. Drop a line, subscribe to the channel as always. Let everybody know in the YouTube algorithms that we're moving things well in Chargers land. And you always got to remember to boat up.